welcome back to my channel. So this is going to be the second video of my surrogacy journey, and this is talking all about the process. So I do have my trusty notebook here, and I just threw my pen. So if you see me looking down, it's because I'm reading stuff. I really hope that you guys liked last week's video. I really liked recording it, and it was a lot of fun. So let's just jump right into this one. All right, so this is this video is the process on how to become a surrogate / a little bit about how I became a surrogate process wise, but it's mainly on just how to. Also, I do want you guys to keep in mind that some of these steps are different. That's kind of the thing with surrogacy. Every situation is different, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so the first thing you want to make sure that you have is all the requirements to be a surrogate. So I'm just going to be reading them off like on my phone. You must be a citizen or permanent resident of the US. So obviously all these things are for people in the US. You must be between the ages of 21 and 40. Anyone above that is considered case by case. You must have carried at least one child of their own to term without complication, and that child must be living. Must have had no more than 3 deliveries by C-section, must have a clear pap in the last 12 months, must present a clearance letter from her OB, must consent to a 10-year background check for herself and any adults living in her home, must have a stable home life, strong support system, and extremely reliable childcare, should not have a recent history of smoking or vaping, should not have alcohol abuse or recreational drug abuse, should have a body mass index of no more than 32. You can definitely Google that. You should also be financially stable, should no longer be breastfeeding at the time of application, should not currently be taking any medications that are category D or category X, you can Google that, and should not have any mental health conditions requiring the use of antipsychotics, anti-anxiety, antidepressants within the last 6 months. So it's kind of a long list, and I'll link the list down below, and that list was from my agency, and I'll link them down below as well. Everything that I'm talking about, I'll try to link down below. But that's kind of the first list that you want to go through. The next list is you want to check to make sure that your state is surrogate friendly. Yes, it's only regulated state by state. So you could potentially live in a state it's actually illegal to be a surrogate in. I know for a fact that New York, it's illegal to be a surrogate in. So what that means is if I went to New York City and for some reason delivered early, the intended parents would have to go to court and legally adopt the child. The child would be considered my child in the eyes of New York, if that makes sense. So check to make sure that your state is surrogate friendly. I know for a fact New Hampshire is one of the top surrogate friendly states, and I'll have a link down below to where you can figure that out. Another thing is make sure that you have insurance, and also check to make sure that your insurance covers you being a surrogate. So you want to call your insurance company and see if surrogacy is covered under your insurance. And I can kind of go into depth. I want to go into depth on this in like another video, because the surrogacy and insurance thing is like a really complicated process as well. But there's a certain billing code. It's called a Z code. That's like a surrogacy billing code, if that makes sense. And you can actually ask your insurance company to run this code and see if it's covered. And if it is covered, then you will be covered as a surrogate. But when I called my insurance company, they actually said, well, we don't care whose child you're carrying, because you could potentially like have a husband but like cheat on him and have that other person's baby. Like, we don't care what baby it is. We just will cover you if you're pregnant. So that was kind of like a weird way that they put it, but I guess it makes sense. Now, if you find that your insurance doesn't cover surrogacy, the intended parents will have to pay for a private plan for you. The next thing is you need to choose your agency. So you can go independently, which means not using an agency, but I highly, highly recommend that if this is your first time, that you go with an agency. So research your agency, see what they require, like see what their matching terms are like. You do not have to have an agency that is within your state. It can be anywhere in the US. And I'll have a link down below for like agency kind of like reviews and stuff like that. And I'll also link my agency down below. Mine is called Family Makers Surrogacy, and I'm actually very pleased with them. So I'll link them down below. But I highly recommend doing research and see that agency's process, because every agency's process on how to become a surrogate is different. So the next thing you want to do is make sure that you have an up-to-date PAP. So probably within 6 months to a year. If you don't have one, go to your doctor and get one. You also want to try and like gather all your medical records together, and also get a clearance letter from your midwife or OB. And you kind of want to have these things like before you sort of go and apply at an agency, because it will kind of cut some time off of your process. But you don't have to have these things. The agency will tell you what you need as well. But it is sort of nice to kind of have this packet to like send to them, because once you apply on their website, they will tell you you need this, this, and this type thing. So that's kind of that sort of kick starts the ball of like the hurry up and wait period of surrogacy. When you apply, usually it's just kind of like a general, your name, address type thing. And then the agency will reach out to you and see if you seem like a good candidate on paper. And that's when they will start the background checks, and they'll probably have you, scan in your license, like, all that stuff. And pretty soon they would send you a link to make up a profile. So a profile is essentially about yourself, why you want to be a surrogate, your beliefs in pregnancy, and even like religious beliefs, that type of stuff. Just sort of if you're pro-choice or pro-life, because those will matter depending on who you match with. They would need to match you with intended parents who are pro-choice or pro-life. That's kind of like a big subject, so to speak. So your profile can take a little while. Once your profile actually is accepted and kind of put into the pool of like other profiles, that's when either your agency will send you profiles of intended parents, or they will send intended parents your profile. And so again, like this is kind of a waiting period where you can sort of, you're just waiting to see if, somebody will be interested. Anyways, once you get an intended parent's profile or vice versa, that's when you would have a Skype conversation, and you'd meet and you'd talk for a little bit, see if the relationship seems good. If everything seems fine after this meeting, that's when you become matched, and your agency will encourage you to keep talking, either daily or weekly. But usually you can have intended parents who are from the US or internationally. We decided we only wanted intended parents who are from the US. You can have same-sex couples, single people. It really depends, and that's kind of like part of your profile. But once you're actually matched, that's when your agency will send all of your medical records to the intended parent's clinic. And that's another waiting period, when you have to wait and see if their clinic will approve you on paper. If you're not approved on paper by their clinic, sometimes you can either start with different intended parents, or depending on what it is, you might not be able to be a surrogate. But you really kind of have to have like this almost perfect situation, so to speak. But once you do get that green light that the clinic has accepted you, that's when you will fly out or drive, depending on where the clinic is. The clinic could be local to the intended parents, it could be local to you, it could be local to neither of you. So that's also something that you would look at in the profile. So you would go to their clinic, and that's where you would have your medical screening and clearance, and that's also where you would have your psych evaluation done as well to make sure you're not crazy and all that. And so that can take between like 1 to 3 days, depending on the clinic. That could take. During that process, you will have blood drawn, urine, a complete physical done. This does vary like between clinics, but you'll also have an ultrasound cavity, and they will take a look at your uterus and make sure everything's perfect there and there's no polyps or, you know, anything scary essentially in there. And then this is also a time where you would meet the intended parents face to face, and it's a very fun time, and you know, most of the time everybody has like a lot of fun, and the clinics are very you know, sweet, and you know, you're going to be making a baby soon, so it's fun. This is also the time where you will get education on how to administer the IVF medications, what type of medications you will be getting, how often you will take these medications, if you have any questions of medications, where you will be physically taking the medications, how you know, what pharmacy you will be using, all that jazz will be covered in this like 1 to 3 days kind of thing. Then after that, you'll either fly home, drive home, whatever, and wait for clearance. And kind of while you're waiting, that's also when you will draw up the contract, pick a lawyer, and go over the contract with your lawyer and the intended parent's lawyer. You should both have separate lawyers. That's key there, separate lawyers. And I do think that it makes a difference to have a lawyer who's in your state be your lawyer, because they'll be more familiar with the surrogacy laws than having a lawyer who's not really familiar with your state, if that makes sense. But it really depends. Some agencies don't let you really pick your lawyer. They kind of just give you like a list. Other agencies do, so that is sort of something to kind of think about. Read your contract, and if you have questions, ask your lawyer, and don't sign anything unless you're 110% like, yep, I'm okay with everything. Because once that contract is signed, you can't really go back because it's a binding contract, unless you want to go to court or something. But usually with the contract, averagely they're between 28 to 50 pages. And usually you say you will do up to 3 transfers averagely. So that means if the first time you don't get pregnant, you'll try to get pregnant 3 times, if that makes sense. So kind of, you know, hopefully while this contract thing is going, you cannot sign your contracts until you're medically cleared. So, you know, hopefully you're medically cleared, and then you can sign the contracts if everything's good. And then literally once you sign the contracts, that's when the pharmacy will send you all your medications in the mail with information on how to refill those medications, questions like numbered, you know, emergency numbers, all that jazz. And you will also be given information about your monitoring clinic. Now, your monitoring clinic is much different than your actual IVF clinic. Your monitoring clinic will be local to you. Mine was about 45 minutes away. I'll link it down below. Granted, I am in New Hampshire, so 45 minutes might seem a lot, but in New Hampshire, that's not a lot. So your monitoring clinic is a place where you will go as you're taking the medications. They need to monitor your body to see and make sure that your body is responding to these medications appropriately to get ready for your transfer date. So your transfer date is when you will actually be inseminated with the embryo, and that's like the best, that's like, you know, the best date, you know, conception, so to speak, but it's not really conception, like artificially. So your transfer date is when, you know, you would all go back to your clinic, IVF clinic, and that's when they would insert a catheter with the embryo in it, and hopefully you would become pregnant in 2 weeks after that. But the monitoring clinic is kind of where you would have ultrasounds done and blood drawn to see how your body's responding. Now, if your body's responding really well to these medications, your transfer date will stay the same from what the clinic said. If your body needs some more time, more medications, different medications, they will adjust your transfer date accordingly. So your transfer date isn't like a set in stone date, if that makes sense. because they want your lining, your uterine lining, to be really, really thick and fluffy, so that the egg has something nice to kind of sit into and implant itself in. So I'm not really going to go into detail about the drugs that you're taking yet. I kind of want to make a separate video on that because it can be really complicated. Each clinic is different on what you actually take. I took Lupron, Delestrogen, and estrogen as a suppository, and a couple of other like oral medications that were prophylactic. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right because I have a problem with that, but whatever. So it really depends on the clinic, but I think I might make a separate video on that. Like, definitely let me know if you would be interested. But yeah, so during the transfer, actually, they do show you the embryo, and it's kind of like this, like, you know, bubbly looking thing, and you will be, it's pretty much like a pap, except less invasive, I almost want to say. I mean, the catheter is like, it's pretty long, but it's really, really, really thin. And you get to watch the whole process on the monitor, because they also have somebody doing an ultrasound. And it's really, really neat and super exciting for everybody there, because you get to kind of see the little blip go into your uterus, and then hopefully after the whole process you become pregnant. So you do have to wait 2 weeks, and they consider you pregnant after you've taken a blood test, which you would have that done at your monitoring clinic, and then you'd have blood drawn 3 more days, excuse me, after that, and hopefully those HCG numbers keep rising. And if they do, after 3 more blood draws and the clinic is satisfied with them, they will transfer you to your regular OB, and it will become a regular pregnancy in the sense of obstetrics, except it's not. But on paper it would become a regular pregnancy, I guess. If you do not become pregnant, you would start the process over again. So you would restart your meds. Usually the clinic would adjust the meds and try to see if that would kind of kickstart things. But honestly, sometimes the embryo just doesn't stick. Like, your body could be absolutely perfectly ready, but the embryo just doesn't stick. And that's just the way it is. IVF is definitely not a guarantee. But it's definitely an emotional process, but I still think that it's worth it in the end. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to say. The process is pretty complicated. Please read the links down below if you're still kind of like, I don't really get it, or leave me a comment and I will try to respond accordingly. But it is a complicated process. I do want to make some more videos about this stuff, so let me know if you're interested. And I hope you have a great day, and thanks so much for watching.